Welcome to the KINGSBEAT podcast, a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Pretty good. That's my best Larry David impression as I mourn the ending of Curb Your Enthusiasm tonight as we tape this on a Sunday. And I'm a little sad about it, to be honest, but what a run. What a show. What a run. And Brenden probably doesn't watch it, has no idea who Larry David is or Curb Your Enthusiasm is, but that's okay. It's all right.
It's not been a show that I dive into either.
Oh, well, you guys don't know quality entertainment.
I would recognize Larry David, and I've seen clips, but that's the extent.
He was at the last Kings game. Well, not the last one. He was at the Knicks game with Susie Essman.
Oh, okay.
Oh, in New York? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And of course, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast is joining us. Brenden, how are you?
What's going on? I'm doing good. Nothing too special, really. Enjoying my weekend. Happy they're on the road a little bit. Not going to lie. Enjoying a tiny little break. And yeah, nothing special. Happy to be talking with you, gentlemen.
Happy to be talking with you. Okay. So, yes, we are Prize Pick. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. I have been doing horribly. I will just be honest. So whatever's happening, it's not good. But that's okay. I'm having a good time playing Prize Picks. And if you want to jump on board with Prize Picks, you can go to the link in the description down below. Use the code KINGSBEAT to get up to $100 matching for your first, if you're a first-time user of Prize Picks. I think it's interesting, though. I've been watching it. It's when you play Prize Picks and you're so used to like the standard of De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray, I don't know, Harrison Barnes and Malik Monk. And then all of a sudden, like there's Keon Ellis options and there's Trey Lyles options and there's Davion Mitchell options. I think it speaks volumes about where the Kings are right now. So Prize Picks, it does mirror the game. And so if you guys are out there and you want to look at what's happening maybe in the girls game that's happening right now, the women's NCAA national championship game, Iowa versus South Carolina is playing as we are doing this podcast. But tomorrow night we actually have the NCAA men's finals, which is UConn and Purdue. Me and Sean have sort of a team that we're pulling for here. In the race, we're in a giant pool and we have potential to like reign Kingsbeat supreme on these fools. So everybody, say a prayer for us and pull for Purdue tomorrow. But
I will say to you two real quick, if anything happens in the women's game or do not tell me. I'm starting it fresh after this. And I have enjoyed the women's tournament way more than the men's tournament this year.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
The women's tournament's been wild.
Ridiculously good.
It's not even close. I mean, the star power is there. The absolute, this game looks completely different than it looked 5-10 years ago. And I even liked it back then. So I liked it going back to the WNBA days in Sacramento way back when the Kings had, or when the Monarchs reigned supreme in Sacramento and had a championship. So this women's game has been unbelievably great.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that the women's game can expand because there's so much talent and so many of these girls deserve an opportunity to keep playing. Like you have first round picks in the WNBA who don't make the roster right now because they don't have enough teams. And so there's a lot of really good players that should be playing basketball still and just don't have the opportunity to play here in the States. So I would love to see the Monarchs come back. I think it would be spectacular. I know Sean feels that same way, but I think everybody's watching this, how it plays out right now. And you're just like, wow, like these are stars, absolute stars. I mean, what Caitlin Clark is doing, holy cow. I mean, she looks like Steph Curry. It's wild.
She really does. And it goes past her. There's Paige Buckers. There's Angel Reese. I said it wrong, huh? I always say it wrong. Beckers. I constantly am questioning myself there.
Drop the U. Yeah. I mean, I think it's spectacular. And the guys game, It really is. If you're watching, Zach Edey is just too big for everybody. Nobody knows what to do with him, and he's like so skilled around the basket. There's really no way to keep him away from the basket, and he just like wanders in. I was watching yesterday, and it was like halfway through the first half, and he's got like 12 points and 7 rebounds, and he hasn't even like left his feet once. Just like it's wild how much bigger he is than everybody else.
And it's
Should be a
funny
good
too,
national
because like
championship game.
this week, earlier this week, I was catching up with people who had local ties to some of the Final Four. Like Coach T, Tom Abeta Marco, who has been back in town after working at Iona with Rick Pitino. He's no longer with Rick; they're no longer together. So he's been back in town, and he was heading to the Final Four. And if you don't know who Abeta Marco is, he was the lead assistant with Jim Valvano the last time. Not only NC State made the Final Four, but won the tournament. They were that was back in 1983, and you remember that image of Valvano running around looking for someone to hug. Just incredible moment. And so he was hoping NC State could even, as an 11 seed, if they were to beat Purdue and ultimately possibly win the championship, which obviously that didn't happen, but that would have been a bigger upset than what happened when his Wolfpack took down Houston. And then I went and had to talk to Brad Miller as well. And among the conversation, I mean, he's a former Purdue Boilermaker, probably still one of the biggest supporters that program has. And in talking to him about Zach Edey, the Big Maple, as they call him, as a Canadian 7-5 monster that he's 7'4".
Yeah.
It's fun to talk to him because Brad Miller was undrafted. He ended up being a 2-time All-Star, once in the East and once in the West, and we're talking doing so in the Shaq era. I remind people of that, like doing so in a Shaq, Alonzo Mourning, Yao Ming type of era to be able to be a 2-time All-Star. And he's like, he thinks Zach Edey, for all the talk about him, who people doubt would be a serviceable NBA player or even a star, he's like, screw that. Like he thinks that he hasn't played basketball very long in his life. There's a lot of training he'd have to still go through, and he's just hoping that he can find the right situation for himself.
Yeah, that's a tremendously large man. What is he like? Is it 7'10" wingspan? Yeah, I mean, he's a gigantic human being. He is really, really slow and camps out in the lane. I don't know how it works in the NBA, but you never know.
Right.
I mean, he'd have to develop. He'd have to develop a lot of passing skills, and he would also have to really, really get in better shape. Like you see him, and I mean, sometimes he doesn't have to run up and down the court, but it's like watching paint dry. Like for a team like Sacramento, like watching him get from one end of the court to the other, like wouldn't be acceptable. So I don't know if I kind of put him like he's a better player than Boban, but like it's that kind of pace moving up and down the court. So yeah, should be interesting. Okay, let's get to the business side. If you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Also, if you can, subscribe to the channel. See a magic thumbs up button. I don't know why that works for me.
Getting no bubbles. It's ridiculous.
It did it on with D'Lo and Casey the other day, and they're like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I am cool. You are not. It's okay." So give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat. We got all kinds of stuff coming up. I'm working very hard right now on I don't know if we'll call it a watch party, but, or a hangout. I don't want to do a live show for the first time we do this, but I'm working on it. I might have a venue, and, I'm excited about it. So as soon as we get through the regular season, maybe this is something that we're able to piece together really quickly. I owe you guys a bunch of off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hours, so we'll try to like kick it off with a live hangout with Sean and Brenden and myself, and then maybe some of our friends, because some of the people we've had over the last couple of years would love to come in and meet everybody, and kind of be there for a hangout. So we'll work hard to get that done here in, I want to say if it's not near the end of April, we'll work on early May, if that makes sense to everybody.
After the Kings losing the play-in.
Season comes to the end.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much if they are still going, where we're all going to be at. So I don't want to have it on like a game night, but I do think having it on an NBA playoff game night would be a good idea, where everyone can kind of hang out and watch TVs and do all that stuff. Also, let's see. One last thing on the business side, if you are hanging out tomorrow Monday, April 8th. We are doing a watch party. ESPN 1320 crew is going to be at Tom's Watch Bar in the Doco. And I don't know what time the game starts. So whenever the game starts, we'll be there. I don't know. We'll probably be there around 4 something or 5 something. But it's going to be like a hangout and just a big watch party. So if anyone wants to come out and join us, hopefully my 2 friends here might be able to join us. If not, no big deal. But we'll see how Sean's shaking his head. Yes, Sean. Okay, let's get into this. The Kings, I don't know what to say. They're in a bad spot. They have dropped to the 9th spot in the Western Conference standings. They're in a situation that I don't think is anyone thought that they would be in at this point. Where the Lakers keep winning and the Kings don't. They keep losing. And they got another tough game coming up against OKC. Against Brooklyn tonight, and then OKC on Tuesday on the road, and then they finish off with like a pretty ridiculous Pelicans Suns back-to-back, followed by a game against the Portland Trailblazers. So the season is going to go by in a blur here. It's so many games over such a short amount of time. Like, where are you guys at with the number 9 seed? The fact that they're number 9, the Lakers are half game ahead of them, but only in the win column. They're tied in the loss column. If these 2 teams tie at the end of the season, the Kings, of course, have a 4-0 record against the Lakers. They would go above them in the playoff standings. But this is, again, it's kind of a dire situation for the Kings.
Yeah, it's one I didn't expect them to. I thought, that this team would be able to keep itself out of the play-in tournament. Now they're looking at staring it right in the face and possibly being on the worst side of the play-in tournament. But I do feel like there's no reason to quote unquote panic, because they still, like you mentioned, they've got a Pelicans matchup, which hasn't served them well this season, but at least you have a way to really gain ground with a win there. Brandon Ingram is probably still going to be out during that time. The Pelicans have kind of done what I predicted. I didn't think that they would stay in the playoff race. I thought they would dip into the play-in tournament. And that was before even Brandon Ingram went down. They weren't playing their greatest basketball. So this could be a really big moment for Sacramento. And then, as you well mentioned, the Phoenix Suns game. I mean, that's 2 games right there that they can lift themselves up by. And you knew this East Coast trek was going to be a tough one, and you couple in the injuries that they've had, with obviously Herter out for the year and Monk now gone for the foreseeable future, and they hope to maybe get him back in the middle of a postseason run. We'll just keep it at that. And so if they can win those 2 games and maybe you finish off this East Coast trip the right way, I think there's still a pathway there, and I wouldn't bet on it, but I do like seeing them in this type of situation. And clearly, I think that Celtics game was a bit telling. Like, there was it was a good game in the sense of how symbolic it was for their season, in my opinion. This is a team in the Celtics who have had complete, utter domination throughout the entire league. They've only lost 3 times on their home court. And yeah, there were a couple key ingredients that they would, and I don't know what Joe Mazzulla was doing, just resting some of his guys, but then all of a sudden the Kings make this magical run and pull within a single point, and then you get a game where there's mild controversy, where it kind of looked like De'Aaron Fox walked, but he was kind of bumped, and the last 2-minute report doesn't really say anything about it, but it does say something about Colby Jones getting hit in the face, and they end up losing that game by 1, and it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. The Kings had no business being making that run the way they did, but it sure gave, I think, its fans and its media a little bit of a, like something to complain about outside of the game that this team should have had any. And again, you just see moments like this throughout the entire season where you lose to a bad team, rise to the occasion, and beat a good team. This one they didn't win, of course, but if you can go, like, I always tend to look at things a little bit from 50,000 feet and go, hey, if you go 2-2 on this road trip before you go in there, would you take it? And I think some people would. I think a lot of people would have taken it given the circumstances with these injuries. So I don't love playing the role of Johnny Optimism. I'm still not going to bet on it that they would keep their head out of water, but I do think that they'll keep themselves in the upper echelon of the 7-8 seed of the play-in tournament. The Lakers are on fire at the moment, so but you can't really control that. You literally have to go to the cliche, which is control what you can control. And I think they'll be in a good spot. You got a week left in this regular season, and it's going to be a really dramatic one for Sacramento.
There's multiple ways you can look at it, right? There's definitely the optimistic kind of that Sean laid out of these are opportunities. They also are just very tough games, and it could go both ways. It's not an easy schedule, definitely remaining. I feel okay about getting back to that 7-8 from Sacramento's perspective. They're a half a game behind 8. Lakers have won 4 in a row, 9 of their last 10. And they're a full game behind 7 where New Orleans is sitting, but they have that matchup. And I was talking about it with somebody the other day. It's got to be a long time since a team has lost to a different team 5 times in one season, given that this is now a thing because of the play-in game that was made this year, and the Kings are currently 0-4, but feel okay about their chances. I think that they've had to change how they play a little bit stylistically. Like they do still have the same core principles, and I guess the same style. They just have to alter certain things. You're seeing bigger lineups out there. Coaches talked about playing Keegan at the 2, or you see lineups with Keegan, Trey, Sasha, and a big man out there. And so just kind of some different things. Malik Monk isn't out there to run pick and roll in that second unit, which was a big thing. And the non-Fox minutes have become more complicated because of that. So definitely some aspects that are just working through at this point in the season. And it's unfortunate that this is when it's happening, but that's the case. And last thing I'll say about that Boston game is, I don't know, I didn't feel very encouraged necessarily by the ending. You could have snuck away with a win. That would have been great. But Jaylen Brown not playing, Derek White not playing, Jason Tatum checks out around the 7-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Al Horford, Drew Holiday, and Kristaps Porzingis don't play the whole fourth quarter. And Peyton Pritchard just kind of went off for a little while. And that's the reason that you didn't end up winning that game, despite a 21-1 run at the end. So good effort, but Boston doesn't really have anything to play for at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to take any put any stock in the Celtics game. The Celtics game, like realistically, it went exactly how I thought it would, except for the fact that the Celtics decided to bench everybody and let the Kings come back and then lose in dramatic fashion as opposed to losing by 20. The Celtics are they're so far head and shoulders above any team in the NBA right now. It's not even close. Their net rating is like a plus 12, things that we've never seen before. Even like last year, the Kings set the all-time record for offensive rating at 118.6. The Celtics were at like 122.6 before that game. Like they're 4 points better per 100 possessions than the Kings were last year when they set the all-time record. And then their defensive rating is like a 110. So like this team is so incredibly good, and they're so system based that I believe personally that, number one, they're going to make it to the finals, but also they've got a really good shot at winning the finals. And so there's no shame in losing to them. And for that matter, there's no shame in losing to the Knicks either. The Knicks are like, it's a coin flip for you. They're the same exact position you are in the standings as far as like their record. And so I don't have any problems with the losses there. I do wish that like the officials would call a blatant foul in the last second, that a guy gets slapped in the face as he's trying to put a tip in to win a game. And it was obvious. And, again, there's nothing you can do about it. The last 2-minute report acknowledged the misplay. But I just, this is where the Kings put themselves in this situation. Like they don't have any leeway at all. And every time that they lose against, it doesn't matter if it's a really good team or a bad team. It doesn't matter anymore at this point. The teams around you aren't losing. And so until you figure out how to just string a couple of wins together in the last 5 games, you're gonna have problems. And so I don't know where the Kings are gonna finish. I would like to tell you guys that I believe you're right and that they will be a 7 or an 8. But I don't know about that. Even like Phoenix has the worst schedule in the world, and they keep winning. They keep finding ways to pick up victories and put some separation between them and Sacramento. I think it'll be interesting. As it currently sits, if the Kings finish as a 9th spot, they would have to play Golden. They would host the Golden State Warriors in a 9-10 playoff game. The winner of that would go on to play the loser of the 7-8 game. If you're the Kings, you would much rather be in a situation where you're at least hosting. Like, so if you're a 7-8 and you lose the first game, then you would play the winner of the 9-10. But that 9-10 would come to you. So I would think that would at least be something you would hope to get. But who knows at this point? Like, this team is all over the board, and injuries have been absolutely brutal. So
by the way,
yeah.
the Suns, just to have them kind of close the discussion on them for a minute, as they sit in 6, 2 games ahead of Sacramento. They play the Pelicans this afternoon. So they've got the Pelicans, and obviously that's right around them. Got the Clippers twice, one at home and one in LA. The Kings, of course, that'll be on Friday, and then they close with an early game in Minneapolis against the Timberwolves
on Sunday.
Yeah,
they had the most difficult schedule in the league. I mean, the 647 win percentage from like the last 10, and they've won plenty of them. They've done a really nice job of like sort of bucking up and figuring out a way to come away with some tough wins against a really, really awkward schedule. Let's get into some of the things that are happening right now. We mentioned the Malik Monk injury, the Kevin Huerter injury, and I think sort of a launching off point would be the Keon Ellis situation. So we're watching Keon Ellis, a young player who like went undrafted last season, earned his way onto a 2-way contract, earned his way into a regular contract this year, and all of a sudden is doing all of the dirty work and maybe earning his way into something more moving forward. We'll start with you, Brenden, because you've been a fan of Keon since the beginning. And like, we joke around about this, but Brenden, you're a young reporter and you seem to connect with the young guys very quickly. And that's a good thing. But I don't think anyone saw like this meteoric rise from him. He's had some hit and miss games over the last couple. But overall, has he changed your thinking on, number one, who he can be moving forward, and number two, on like maybe who's starting at the shooting guard spot next season for the Sacramento Kings?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was always reason to be interested defensively. You could see it in summer league or if in Stockton last year, and the 3-point shot too. So like the catch and shoot 3-and-D nature, I think was always the idea of him. But some of the off the dribble stuff, just a little bit, which I think he's gotten forced to do a little bit more because teams are willing to be that's the guy we're okay with beating us. And he's, I think, done a decent job punishing teams from 3, but maybe running a pick and roll once or twice a game, like little flashes of stuff that intrigue me a little bit and make me wonder what his potential future could be. And I still worry what this is going to look like in the postseason. Like I mentioned, he's going to be the guy that, I keep thinking at some point teams are going to stop going under screens. I don't think that's going to happen until after the postseason. Like, I think teams are going to be okay with, you can beat us and prove that you're really this guy, because he's practically a rookie. I know that he spent last year in the NBA. He was with Stockton. This is the first time he's getting notable reps with the main club in Sacramento. So I still worry what the postseason is going to look like with him. And there are some foul troubles that I think have been the biggest thing that keep him out of some of these games and put him in tough situations, him and the team in general. But there's encouraging aspects for sure that make me believe that he is a rotational player. I'm still hesitant on starter. Now, 5th starter is a role that I think a lot of fringe starter guys can fill, and maybe Keon can do that. That's kind of what he's filling right now, but I'm still unsure about what long-term looks, and even this postseason, really.
Sean, what are your thoughts?
Very much in line with what Brenden said there. I mean, this is a tremendous opportunity for him, and this is fantastic. But at the end of the day, I don't really view him as a starting player. I think he's a starter by necessity, and I think I look at him in a similar light as Malik Monk, where people look at, but it's in a converse type of role, right? Most people would look at Malik Monk as a starter, plays like a starter, finishes his games as a starter, gets bulk minutes as a starter, but isn't a starter. He comes off the bench. So it's similar. Like, to me, like, ideally, if Keon Ellis is your rotational piece and is able to do a lot of the things that he does so well, but not in a starting role, because ideally you'd want to be a little bit better there at the 2 guard position, a little bit more consistency and experience. I can certainly see all that, but good for him, man. I mean, he's been able to take advantage of it. He's been able to put himself in this position to have this conversation. And look, we've seen what it looks like when Kevin Huerter is on, and when he's right. I'm not there yet to say that Keon Ellis is a much better player than Kevin Huerter, but certainly he's put himself in the conversation. So when you're going out and making some of these decisions in this offseason, he's something you have to factor. But the good news is, and whether he's a starter or not, he has a very, very team friendly contract, and barring a trade that all of a sudden maybe a team puts a nice package together, and maybe he's not the centerpiece of it, but all of a sudden is become a little bit of a nice prize possession that a team might go after in a trade with something else. He's probably put himself in a much better light on the market for sure. So, but I do like the fact that the Kings could hold on to him, and he's got a very team friendly contract and could keep him here for several more years, really, if they choose, to see how these next 2 years go, and then maybe elevate him later on.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take a totally counter approach to you guys. I do agree with Sean in that he is a starter in the way that Malik Monk is a bench player. And so, like, in a perfect world, if you had some like top tier shooting guard, like Keon Ellis wouldn't be your starter, right? But I also think that, like, the way that they play, they complement. Like, again, Malik Monk gets more opportunity and complements a second unit more than he would starting. And the fact that he can play 30 something minutes as a guy coming off the bench is fine. I also think that Keon Ellis, like, I don't know that, like, they're best served with him playing 38 minutes a game right now while he's still limited in all the things that he does. But I do think that he does enough defensively. He does enough to take pressure off De'Aaron Fox. He does enough hitting the 3 ball. He's shooting 40% on the season. And last year he shot 50% in his limited time, but we're looking at like 2.5 threes a game at this point. I think he can be a long-term starter. We keep talking about these long, athletic, physical players that the Kings lack. And for a shooting guard, that is exactly what Keon is. He might not be like he's probably like 165 soaking wet. But that doesn't mean he can't get stronger, he can't get bigger. And I also haven't seen that be an issue with him. I think he will fill out as he gets like deeper into his career. And I look at him a little bit like I do like Kentavious Caldwell Pope. Is he as good as Kentavious Caldwell Pope right now? Probably not. Well, he's not. But he can be that good. He can be a player that plays like that, who fills a role for a really good team. And you look around the league, how many teams out there do you look at and say, okay, they have that player? And whether it's a 3 or it's a 4 or it's a shooting guard, whatever it is, they have this guy in their starting lineup that doesn't have to score a bunch of points to be impactful. And, I even look at like a guy like PJ Tucker, who has an average 10 points a game probably in like 12 years, but still is an impactful player. Doesn't matter where he's at. Maybe not this season, but every other season leading up to this, or a guy like Jay Crowder, who gives you something. So I think he can be a player for the Kings. And I also, like Sean, you bring up the fact that, he doesn't make anything, and that's possible that, like, it would open a door for a trade or something. I'd also say he doesn't make anything. And if you're able to trade a guy like Kevin Huerter in the offseason making 17 or 18 million, and you have a guy who's making 2 million, all of a sudden you got 16 million to play with at another position, especially if you can bring back Malik Monk. I think the Kings would be okay walking into next season with something like Davion and Fox and Monk and Ellis and maybe Duarte, maybe someone else at that shooting guard position, and even a guy like Colby Jones playing back behind those guys as a backstop, and then trying to improve all the depth at the 3, the 4, and the 5. So I don't know. I like what he's done, and I do think that there is potential that, again, long term, he can work himself in, whether it's a Matisse Thybulle or like all of these types of players that have been starters on really, really good teams. And they just help the team they complete the puzzle in the starting lineup and allow someone who might be a better scorer to come off the bench. Yes, no.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, Alex Caruso, Torrey Craig are undrafted players that ended up making a name for themselves. Lou Dort, some of these guys like different builds, but there are successful guys that come out of being undrafted. And I think the value of his contract is definitely big. And, if you're talking about, I hate that a guy plays well and I think of, wow, this could be really good for his offseason value, because these are all humans that I'm hoping play well where they're currently at. But I do think of that a little bit with how Davion's been playing recently. I think that he's been playing extremely well, and the Kings need it right now, first and foremost. It stands out to me since that Minnesota game that De'Aaron Fox missed on the road, where Malik had that huge overtime in fourth quarter, but Keon ended up starting, but there was a message to Davion of be more aggressive offensively. And it feels like kind of since that moment, at least that's the moment that I really noticed it, he's been doing that and getting to the basket. He can get past defenders and get to the paint and make plays from there. The spray threes, that we hear about who knows how many times every post game. Yeah, spray it to the hot guys. And so I think that he's taken a really big jump offensively. There's been his shots going down from three. He's finishing well around the rim. And I really feel like he's put something together recently. I don't know if it's just a level of confidence or what exactly, but his aggression is there. And you're seeing what some of the intriguing aspects of him were offensively at the time he was drafted.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sean, where are you at with that? Because I think, again, like the Kings need cheap pieces, like affordable pieces to go with the players that they have, right? That's kind of the Daryl Morey way of building a roster. You're very top heavy, and the Kings would like to find another star to make this team even more top heavy. And so if you have, two guys making 35, 40 million bucks, and one of them, those guys in De'Aaron Fox, is all of a sudden going to be making 50 or 60 here in not too long. And then you got a guy like Keegan Murray who's coming up. There's going to come a point where you can't pay everybody. And so you have to have guys like Keon, guys like Davion, even a guy like Chris Duarte, who doesn't make that much money for what he does. But yeah, I mean, advanced roster building, this does seem like it's a good piece to have.
100%. I mean, every team, doesn't matter how good they are or terrible they are, they always are trying to find that diamond in the rough, that uncovered stone that they can go out there and say, hey, look what we found on this and look what it blossomed into. Now, it doesn't always work, but so far, so good when it comes to Keon Ellis. I mean, this would be a big, potentially a big find for, Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox, that whole front office, and a guy who back at, was talking to some of these local guys who had Final Four connections. Obviously, Keon Ellis is one of them, with Alabama being in the Final Four and going up against UConn and ultimately falling. But he had a JUCO route. He played 1 year at Alabama, and you're looking at his stat line, you're not overly impressed by it. He doesn't look like a guy that he's certainly a very active player, as we've seen, but he wasn't a guy that you'd look at and go, well, I'd see an NBA player here. And to see someone develop the way they have, both through the G League, being a two-way player, going undrafted, Summer League has been a huge part of that as well. It's a great story to see somebody's fight, the resilience, their evolution of them, not only as a player, but even just the whole mental approach to the game. It's really quite something. And Brendan's right. I mean, we talked about it, like, his impact defensively has always been there. And that was one of the things I asked him earlier. Actually, I shouldn't even say earlier in the season. This was probably just about a month ago, where how much his defense, like, obviously defense is where he had the greatest impact with Sacramento, even over his time in the NBA. But like how different it is now compared to when he first came in the league, like what part of his defensive evolution has gotten much better. He didn't really have an answer. It's just literally came down to experience. And part of that came with the turning the head of against Jalen Brunson and watching him blow right by him. And it's kind of one of those signature moments right there in his career. But it's something where just having that moment, and you can still see a guy still learning and taking these steps, that even for as fantastic as he is defensively and on a team that doesn't have a lot of fantastic pieces defensively, he adds so much, and he's still not quite at the tip top level of what he does the best. And I think that is super encouraging for him and for this team. And yeah, you can, but again, I remind people, like you laid out all these guards that they have around them. It's like these teams do change quite a bit year in, year out. And that's why you don't get too attached to any of your players that you see here, because they could be playing in different uniforms one day. So never know when that comes, but this team certainly this year bet on the continuity. I don't know that they're going to do so next year.
No, I would agree. But I also think that you've been searching for long, athletic defenders, and again, he doesn't do it at the position that the Kings really need it, the 3 and the 4.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they don't need it at the shooting guard as well. And so I'm intrigued to see what happens. Even if Kevin Huerter is back next season, even if Harrison Barnes is back next season, I could even see Kevin playing a lot more small forward, and kind of giving, because I think that position fits him better defensively. Anyway, I think it's interesting. And Brenden, your point about Davion Mitchell, like looking at him and seeing how he might not just be playing himself into like more minutes now, but he might be playing himself into a second contract in the NBA with somebody who, whether it's the Kings or it's not the Kings, he's under contract next season, and then he would be a restricted free agent the summer after. But I still don't, like, if you're the Kings, I don't know what the Kings would offer if they were going to go for like a rookie scale extension. And I'm going to guess that they won't be offering a rookie scale extension this summer, and they would wait until the following offseason to let him go in. But if this is who he can be at the NBA level, and what we're seeing him having like this really nice impact on the defensive end, but also figuring it out on the offensive end, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the Kings. It's a really good thing for Davion, because like I've said it like so many times, and I think people think I don't like Davion Mitchell. I really like Davion. I think he's a hard worker. I think he's a good kid. And probably the hardest worker the Kings have. But at the same time, you just kept watching him like square peg in the round hole thing, and he just wasn't fitting in. And then all of a sudden, like at the All-Star break, he must have watched film, or he must have some really tough conversations with people, but all of a sudden he does. He fits in, and he's not hesitating, and he's making moves that, like, I'm like watching him pull up like 14 footers. You're like, "Hey, look at that." Step backs, taking it to the rim, but looking like Isaiah Thomas taking it to the rim, where he's using his shoulders to create space and separation from much larger defenders and scoring. So I think it's great to see the evolution of even a guy like Davion, where, I don't want to say we left him for dead, but I mean, the fact is, like, halfway through the season, he wasn't playing very much, and you had no idea what his future was, and all of a sudden he's looking more and more like a player with a future.
The best Kings draft pick in that Boston game, though? Xavier Tillman.
Oh, yeah. One of those.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Traded for Woodard. What a shame.
Oh,
I'm not over it.
Yeah.
But on Keon, somebody that he has a really good relationship with, and vice versa, was the coach that he was assigned to last year when he came up to Sacramento, was Lindsey Harding, who's doing a great job right now with Stockton, going on to Western Conference Championship, I believe is the game today, right, Sean? I think I have that right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And, I think there's an encouraging aspect of Kobe's following a very similar route to what Keon did last year, trying to learn a little bit more of the ball handling sort of quote unquote point guard role, I guess, because I say I guess because in Sacramento's offense, it's not like typical what I think you would think of with point guard responsibilities. But I think it's an encouraging thing. Now Lindsey is, getting to work with Kobe a little bit. And I know he's been with the main team rather than Stockton now, but I think it's also an encouraging sign for their developmental system.
Yeah, I think they are doing a good job of developing players. And, again, I think it's a team effort, but, like, this is what you have to do. If you're going to create a pipeline, you've got to put money into it, and you've got to support these guys the right way. And so I know we get asked all the time, like, the Kings can't pull up any of these guys to replace a Malik Monk or a Kevin Huerter. They don't have a roster spot. So I know that's something
Right.
that someone always asks, especially when it comes to, like, can they pull up Stanley Johnson, or can they pull up Scal? They just can't do any of that. But we could see in the last week of the season, maybe a Mason Jones be with the team if either the Stockton Kings win out or if they get bounced from the playoffs. I think he still has, I want to say he has 6 games left, so maybe 5 games left that he can be in uniform for the Kings. And I did ask about that. That was a weird thing. Like the NBA prorates the 50 games. So it's basically, if you think of a two-way player can play up to 50 games, but that's a certain percentage out of 82. And I don't know what that percentage is, probably like 65% or something. So if you sign a guy to a two-way contract and there's only 20 games left, he can only play in like 65% or whatever that percentage would be. So kind of an interesting thing there. I don't know. What do you guys think is going to happen here? I know it's kind of weird to like throw this back out there again, but the Kings have 5 games left in the season. They've got Brooklyn today. They've got OKC on Tuesday. Then is that what it is? And then Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday.
Thursday, Friday, Sunday.
Thursday, Friday. So we've got Pelicans, Suns, and then Blazers. Like if you guys were betting men, 2-3, 3-2, 4-1, 1-4.
I don't know. I mean, I'll go first here because the whole. I hate answering a question with "I don't know," but aside from being a 500 basketball team or having the characteristics of one, I just don't know how they're going to respond. And I feel like this team could very easily go 4-1. I wouldn't bet on it. I think a 3-2 would be right in line with what you're looking at for these remaining 5. But you just kind of you haven't seen these long win streaks this season. And last year you'd seen some moments where you'd go out and rattle off 7-8 wins. And this year you just haven't had that. I think their longest win streak was a 6er, right? 6 games.
Yeah, in the beginning of the season.
And the closest they've come to it since was like 4. I think they
4
even had
twice.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
So to think that this team could go 5-0, I mean, sure they could, but will they? I mean, and if they do, you're feeling really good about them going into I would imagine you're feeling pretty good about them going into, these, I like to call them single elimination, even though they're not really, I mean, they're potentially single elimination, but how it could look, and it's in spirit with March, with what you see in college basketball. So, I don't know. I just feel like they have to play well going into that tournament, because if they stumble in, I just don't see them flipping a switch and saying, well, let's say you're playing the Lakers. Oh, we've played them well, we're going to rely on that again, and it's going to have a similar result. I don't think it will. I would believe in the momentum that the Lakers have built. If you're going up against the Warriors again, I don't think anybody wants to see that matchup, and even including Warriors fans, to be honest, because I think everyone's just so tired of that whole matchup as in general. Obviously, if you've got the Pelicans, oh my gosh, that's a terrible matchup for Sacramento, even if Brandon Ingram is out. So yeah, I don't think there's a ton of optimism in terms of the way people feel right now, but I feel like they should feel good about these next 5 games, because it's the last of the season. Like, how does this team respond going into these games and trying to treat every one of them as these must-win situations? Even OKC is a team that you've played pretty well.
You're up 2-1 in season series.
So, and potentially you could see them if you advance out of that play-in tournament or whatever. I mean, you might be playing OKC. So, I don't know. I think, again, would I bet on it? No, but I think you should feel pretty optimistic because they kind of control their own fate.
I felt pretty good about the defense in the month of March, where they were 7th in defensive rating. And it was like, oh, there's good progress here. There's physicality. And they've really been big on winning the possession game. And the free throws have really hurt them recently. Like, you really see, I mean, the Kings are averaging 10 less free throw attempts than their opponents in the last 5 games. And Mike Brown talked about it after that Knicks game. I forget the word he used, but he pretty much was saying that they need to like accentuate the contact maybe a little bit more on their end. But I think that defensively, it's what comes with being a team that doesn't have the greatest defensive personnel and is just trying to really muck up the game and try to get turnovers and be physical and a ridiculous amount of double teams in these last handful of games. And it's funny, you see it work great against the Clippers, and James Harden's held to single digits, and then Jalen Brunson just totally picks it apart. And it is, funny to me that that's when everybody chooses to go at Mike Brown on socials for doubling all game long when it clearly worked last game. But whatever, I digress. I worry about the defense is what I'm getting at here, is that I was encouraged by the progress. And then I think we've gone back to some of these inconsistencies. And a lot of that has to do with fouling to me. Keegan has been like very confusing to me on that end of the floor as of late. Like sometimes teams are picking on him. And he talked about going into this postseason, what he learned last year is like last year he was the guy that everybody was targeting, and he doesn't want to be that this year. And we've seen that progress throughout the regular season, but I'm curious to see how much he gets tested as we get closer here. So I guess I'd go 3-2. I think that there is just still a lot of inconsistencies that come on the defensive end. And I think there's always going to be inconsistencies on offense. It's just how every team in the NBA works. But if you can't really solidify yourself defensively like I thought they had, it's hard to gauge, really, in my mind.
Yeah, I'm with you on so much of that, Brendan. Like I think defensively they've been okay, and I think that they've dared teams to beat them. Right? They've dared specific players to beat them, and certain nights it happens. They get beat by somebody, right? And then other times, like again, we saw it. I think the Dallas game was like a perfect example. In game 1, you dared PJ Washington to beat you, and he beat you. In game 2, you dared PJ Washington to beat you, and he didn't beat you. You ended up losing, but that was probably more because you lost Malik Monk than it was anything else. And so I don't know. I think there are defensive improvements. I think they're 13th in defensive rating since the All-Star break, which is, again, a sign of improvement. Puts them in the top 15 in the league, the top half of the league. But, you do need more defensive personnel. And I think it's something that has to be addressed during the offseason, like it should have been addressed during last offseason and at the trade deadline and everything else. I also think, like, offensively, they keep going away from what works, and I don't know why that is. And I know sometimes it's because teams make defensive adjustments, and then the Kings aren't hitting it with a counter. But I think if you look at not only Sabonis's points per game being down over the last like 10, but his assist rate is down. His assists are down considerably over the same stretch. It just shows you that teams are playing like a different playoff style against them, and it's gotten more physical. And once again, I don't think the Kings have fully adapted to the physicality that hits this time of year. And so it's probably a good thing that they're having this type of road to the playoffs, because even if they don't make the postseason, they're at least getting this type of experience where the physicality is something different than what they're used to. And then again, it's something you need to address in the offseason. This team's lack of physicality. So,
yep.
Yeah,
and a lot of their success last year came from getting more spacing also around Fox and Sabonis, and that was drafting Keegan Murray, that was signing Malik Monk and trading for Kevin Huerter, and now you're without two of them.
Yeah, and again, the one thing I would point out, it doesn't matter how good Keon Ellis is from behind the arc. He's like the Kings version of what we're talking about with PJ Washington, or when the Kings played the Suns and it was Royce O'Neal and Josh Okogie and Nasir Little who beat them. Teams are leaving Keon Ellis open. And what I don't want to see again is teams leaving Keon Ellis open. He hits 3 threes in the first quarter and he shoots 4 shots for the game. And to me, that speaks to a larger issue that the Kings have of like, if they're not guarding him, he's somewhere. Somebody needs to find him. Like, what exactly are we doing here? And if they are guarding him, that should open things up for Fox and Sabonis. But I still don't think they are. And I just think the Kings are doing a poor job of continuing to stay the path. And they keep getting roped into watching Luka and Kyrie and then playing that style, watching Jalen Brunson and then playing that style. And it's just too much, too many dribbles. It's not Kings basketball. And that's why you see like these giant inconsistencies from one game to the next, or even from one half of a game to the next. Just my opinion. Okay, let's get to let's get to the business of basketball.
There it is. And
oh,
at the
no,
it's not that one. It's not both.
Damn it!
Oh,
Damn it! I was like, "What's going on?" I was confused.
Yeah,
You were confused.
That
You're
was
the one
your
who
moment,
steps in.
Sean. That was your moment, Sean. Damn it!
I already did my Larry David impression, so
Oh, amazing. Yeah, let's get to the business of basketball, and it's actually not going to be the business of basketball. It's going to be the business of baseball, which is weird and awkward. And I want to get your guys' opinion on, and I'm going to make this statement right now. It's the Sacramento A's. I don't give a flying F what anyone thinks. It's the Sacramento A's. Don't call them the Athletics or the A's. They just filed a trademark. It's the Sacramento A's. So for the next 3 years, there will be the Sacramento A's. And I would like your guys' opinion on this wild and crazy turn of events. And you can take it anywhere you want. You can talk about the hypocrisy of Vivek Randive saving one franchise and aiding and abetting the larceny of another. Or you could what you think baseball would mean to Sacramento, or whatever you like. What
Can
are
I
your
go
thoughts?
first, Sean? Because you guys are going to have more thoughts here.
No, in a second. Yes, you'll go for. I just want to ask one question. Let's begin with the aiding and abetting, because is it like I think I have a hard time understanding this, because certainly I feel for the A's fans. 100%, I feel for A's fans. Like, period, full stop. What's happening to A's fans is absolutely wrong, and it should not be happening. Okay. That being said, Sacramento is not to blame here. Okay. Vivek Ranadive, in my opinion, is not to blame here. Your team, if you're an A's fan, your team is already moving. Okay. The whole, like, you are helping your friend and John Fisher move his team away to somewhere else while his stadium gets built, which it may not. Okay, a lot can happen. If you're Vivek Ranadive and all you care about is necessarily Sacramento, and you realize there are some fans that are getting screwed here, sure. But this team could be playing in Salt Lake City. This team could be playing in Las Vegas in a AAA ballpark there. This team could be playing at Oakland. But let's be real. Let's be honest. James, you're an A's fan. You think this team would be playing in Oakland? No. The answer is no. John Fisher, that owner, wants absolutely zero to do with Oakland. He does not want to be there. He's not the only one. The Warriors have left. The Raiders have left. In-N-Out Burger has left.
Is that
no
bullshit?
Yes, it's
what?
Right there in Hagen. Right across the street from the Coliseum, In-N-Out Burger has left Oakland.
Oh,
okay,
no.
They're not the only
It's
ones.
the first
Go
time
look
in the
through that shopping
history.
center.
It's the first time in history In-N-Out has removed In-N-Out once they've built one, and it's for one specific reason. They're tired of the crime rate. They feel that their employees are unsafe. They feel that their employees' vehicles were not safe, and they decided to end their. So I get that.
Magic Johnson had built right next to it a shopping pad, as he's done in cities all over the country, where it was, I might get one of these wrong, but it was Starbucks, Wingstop, T-Mobile, and like one other. I think there's only one of those, but one or two of those businesses are still there. Okay. I'm drawing this big thing here saying, it's, guys, no matter what you feel about John Fisher, he doesn't want his product in Oakland. Okay. And I'm not trying to blame Oakland, because Oakland, in my opinion, still deserves a baseball team. But Vivek Ranadive is trying to bring baseball to Sacramento. And that will eventually probably put if A's do end up in Las Vegas, and Sacramento is trying to still get a expansion team or a relocated team that ends up coming to them, or even keeping the A's if it turns out that way. Or there's a pathway of Vegas falling through and the A's having to kind of slunk back to Oakland as a possibility. Whatever it lies in there, like showing off Sacramento as a sports market and trying to deliver a baseball team here is capitalizing on, yes, an opportunity, but it doesn't come at the expense of A's fans. And that's my rant. Because I just don't see how one has to be vilified for doing this, because again, this team could be playing in Vegas. It could be in Salt Lake City. It's not going to be in Oakland. And the closest thing to that is Sacramento. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my problem, number one, is that Major League Baseball let an owner basically play out the plot of Major League over 19 seasons.
Right.
Like, he's destroyed a franchise from the inside. He's killed the core of fandom. Like, he is a plague on Major League Baseball's society, and he should not have been allowed, just like the Maloofs should not have been allowed to be owners any longer. And so for me, that's for starters. And I agree with you as far as Oakland being a major league city. And I actually like the idea. I think baseball should be in Sacramento. And I don't think that you can have baseball in Sacramento and two teams 90 miles down the road. That doesn't make any sense. So this will open a door for potential for baseball. Now, I don't trust Rob Manfred as far as I can throw him. I think he is an asshat and the worst commissioner in professional sports. And he's allowed this to happen under his watch, where somebody has just like completely destroyed a fan base and killed the love of the game for a gigantic community. And that goes for everybody. Like, you can be like, there are a lot of Giants fans in Sacramento. There are also a tremendous amount of A's fans. Like, we all grew up watching either one or the other, being a fan of one or the other. Not just like there are Raider and 49er fans in Northern California and in Sacramento and all around Sacramento, the Sacramento metropolitan area, even all the way up to where I'm at. I just feel like you allowed somebody to damage your game by killing off a fandom. Like, people don't want to follow baseball anymore because of this owner and because of how he just handled himself. Now, as far as Vivek, I mean, let's be honest here. Like, Vivek bought the River Cats like a year and a half ago, and all of us thought, why in the world would he buy the River Cats? It's not a cash cow. Like, does it break even? Maybe it breaks even, but it doesn't make a bunch of money. It's not like the outdoor venue that you would want in downtown. It's not like some spectacular concert venue or anything else. It's just not. So why was he going to buy it? And we now have the answer, because him and his buddy John Fisher were hanging out in Cabo at their houses in Cabo and hatched a plan to move the team here, at least momentarily. But even to bring baseball to Sacramento, it would take so much still. Like, if you're going to get a relocation, I mean, if you're going to get an expansion team, you're talking probably $2 billion for an expansion team. The city of Sacramento can't find somebody to buy a MLS team, which is nowhere near that much money. Not only that, but it's going to cost you probably 1.5 or 2 billion to build a stadium in Sacramento. Again, where is that money coming from? So I love the idea of baseball in Sacramento. I love the idea of the A's in Sacramento. I think that eventually, if you didn't let this guy burn it down, and if you replace the owner, you could actually find success in Sacramento, where a lot of those fans in Oakland are willing to come to Sacramento to watch their team. You can't do it with this ownership, and that's where my stumbling block is. Like, I would love to see baseball here, but I can't handle the idea that John Fisher gets another bite at the apple and could completely destroy another community's love for the game. And that community being Sacramento, when I believe this is a great baseball town. Anyway, Brenden, sorry, we skipped over you. We just ran over your
fine.
ass.
You're totally fine. I don't have much else. I'm not the you guys are definitely more baseball oriented than myself, I guess. But I mean, I definitely feel for the people in Oakland. I think that, growing up in the Bay Area, watching them lose all three teams or Oakland specifically, is kind of ridiculous. And it's still hilarious to me that the Warriors didn't wear Oakland on their jerseys until they moved to San Francisco. But, whatever. I do also selfishly think I would be excited for the A's to be here, is what I will add. And I think that, there's other people that probably live in the area that, I don't have strong feelings about the A's leaving because, again, I was never that into baseball, or at least in recent years, and specifically the A's. So I do kind of selfishly view it from the standpoint of I'm excited to have a team here. And I feel for all the fans, and I have friends that are A's fans that are certainly going through it. And again, feel for that. But I'm excited about the prospect of having a team here, getting to go see some of these games and good players that are going to come into town as well as they play this. So I'm interested to see how it goes, and it gives Sacramento an opportunity to show their sports fandom as a city.
And the thing I look at this, like, it's not Sacramento facilitating a move. Think of it this way. Hurricane Katrina happened in New Orleans horribly, right? That basketball team went to Oklahoma City and played there for a while before they could return to New Orleans. And then the Sonics went to Oklahoma City as a move. They ended up with their own team. That's, to me, more of the comparison as to what's going on here, because you have to find a place to play. It's not like, hey, in order for Vegas to work, Vivek needs to put the Kings or put the A's in Sacramento, or John Fisher needs to put the A's in Sacramento. He has other options. He can go to Salt Lake City. He can put them in the AAA ballpark in Vegas. There's so many different places that he could go. The one place he did not want to put them was Oakland. It was off the table. It wasn't going to happen.
Well, that, and Sean, I'll add too. I know some people are like, oh, well, what will happen in year 2 if they're winning? So the A's, the over under on the A's this season was 56.5 games. And for people who don't know, there's 162 games in baseball. So, so they had them losing over 100 games, which is not something that happens all the time, but it all of a sudden it is, because the A's don't put any money into the product at all. Um, and people are like, well, what happens in year 2 of Sacramento if they're winning 60 games again? Like, first of all, the stadium is so small, it's ridiculous. Like, with the grassy knoll, it's 14,000 fans. I think
14,014.
okay, I think there's a possibility that their Major League Baseball and the players union is going to say, "Hey, before that place is deemed major league quality, we need to see at least like an additional like 6,000 seats and bleachers. Like, you have to put in bleachers and you have to expand so we actually have it feel like a major league park." I think that that's what will happen. I don't know who will pay for that, and there is
And
time to build bleachers, right?
Yeah, and it probably won't happen in year 1, meaning that because this is a 3, potentially 4-year proposition on the temporary level, that that some of those additions that they make might not happen until year 2.
It should happen right now. They should
It
just
should.
literally build it out right now. There's no reason to wait at all.
Well, there's a baseball season going on at the moment. The River Cats still have to play there, and they did just redesign their clubhouse. They're going to build another one. It's going to be a year-round thing out there, and especially when
Yeah.
baseball begins, to see the River Cats split the venue. And ultimately, I think that the River Cats on occasion will still have to play elsewhere. But yeah, it's going to be a very busy place over there over the next 3 to 4 years.
No, I totally agree. They need to build it out. They need to,
Right.
and the other problem is, like, we talked about this before, but like when they were building that park, when it was Rayleigh Field, when they were building it, it was like a horrific rainy season, and they decided to scale back like the pylons in the ground and the steel girders that went up. So originally they were going to build the stadium in 2000 with the ability to add a third deck in case they were able to get Major League Baseball here. They didn't do that. And now the stadium cannot be expanded in that way. They cannot add a third deck. They can't add more like high end seating up there. Like, it kind of is what it is. And so if Major League Baseball was to come to Sacramento long term, they would have to get a stadium. They would have to build a stadium, whether it be the rail yards or whether there's enough property right there in West Sac to actually build um, onto Sutter Health Park. And then the other point I was going to make is, like, I honestly believe fans in Sacramento, they're not going to care whether the team is good or not. I think people are going to be excited to go see the Cubs and the Red
Yep.
Sox and the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Padres and the Giants and
I mean, that's me, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that park will, because it's so small, it will sell out every single game or really close to it. I don't think it'll be a problem at all. It's not going to make any money because it's so small. There's a big difference between, again, they could sell out every single game and still be last in Major League Baseball in attendance by like, hundreds
by a
of
lot.
thousands, right? So that's going to be a problem.
But to that point too, though, you compare that to what Oakland would have been, they weren't going to make any money.
No.
I
In
mean, you're
stadium, they're
talking
not going to make any
6,000
money at
people
all.
per game, basically.
Not even that. Like my
Not
buddy
even that.
said, the second game of the season he went to, they announced a crowd at like 6,800. He said he counted, and he said it was more like 2,300.
And by the way,
Yeah.
I actually looked this up. I'll bring it up really quickly. Last year, just to give you an example, the excuse me, the last year, so we're talking 14,014, and that's with the grass seating sold out, right? The Oakland A's were at 10,275 on let me get up here, on average, okay?
Oh.
And that was average for the entire season. They were the only team to not eclipse 1 million total on both in there. They factor in road as well, but or the 832,352. Okay. There were 5 teams, 1, 2, 3. No, sorry, there were 4 teams. One barely got over 20,000. 4 teams under 20,000 on average. And that was, we'll go from top to bottom. So it was Pittsburgh was the one that was barely over 20,000. So they were 20,131. Tampa Bay at 17,781. Kansas City, who is just rejected a stadium of their own for the Royals for a public financing, 16,136. And Miami, the Marlins, 14,355. That's still 4,500 almost above what Oakland was at with 10,275.
Well, that, and just doing quick math, if you're going to sell out 4,000 more seats than you did in the other spot, without adding any bleachers or anything, you're looking at, because of the bulk of games, 81 games, you're looking at like 320,000 more seats sold. So that's a lot. And so again, I think that they can make more money here. I also don't think that they're going to spend money. That's what people say, well, what makes you think that John Fisher isn't going to put some money into the product in Sacramento? It's like, well, we got 19 years of him being an asshat to prove that he's not going to do that. Just straight up, like, he's a bad owner.
Well, and again, if they want to play like a minor league team, they'll play like a minor league team in a minor league ballpark.
Yeah. I just think
the only reason they've had all-stars, especially in recent memory, and talks about the last 3 to 5 years, is because you have to pick one from. You have to
because
have
it's mandated.
Representation. Yeah,
Major League Baseball mandates that there's an all-star from every team. Yeah, that's the only reason Rooker made the all-star team last year, or some of the closers they've had that have made the all-star team. Yeah, it's a mess. Okay, well, good discussion. I for one, I'm not going to be someone who says I will never go to a game. I don't like that John Fisher still owns the team, but again, he's owned it for 19 years. It would be like ridiculous. Like, I have a 20-year-old, and like, his entire life is, the team's been owned by John Fisher, and we haven't made it like such a point that we won't be fans because he doesn't put any money into the team. So I can't say that now, because he's always done it this way. So anyway, I think it should be interesting. And I would leave it like, have your own opinions on it. Feel however you want to feel. I'm totally A-okay with people totally disagreeing with me. I just think, like, again, I hate to see an owner who has proven he's not worthy of being an owner, not being worthy of being a steward for a franchise, get to continue to be that. And lastly, I'll add, like, for people who wonder what Vivek might, like, what's in it for him. I guarantee you that every single Major League Baseball team, all 30, well, 29 of them are going to, outside of the A's, are going to have a contract with the Sawyer Hotel. And Major League Baseball is not like the NBA, where a team comes in for one day and is gone. Every series is 3 or 4 games. So that place is going to be booked out they're going to have a ton of people there. And You get to have, we all know Vivek loves to bring crazy star people to the arena. Now he's going to have a pipeline all the way through the end of the season, and sometimes even in the early part of the season, where we'll see, if the Yankees are in town and they play a day game over there, you could see Aaron Judge and some of these guys showing up to watch a Kings game at night. And so there's going to be a buzz, and there's going to be an economic boom from having the A's in Sacramento. That's the facts. Like, there's going to be a lot more nightlife. There's going to be a lot more people downtown going to restaurants on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. It's actually going to be a really, really good thing for Sacramento. And if they can prove they're a major league city, maybe it also is sort of the catalyst for the hotels and the other things moving in that the Kings need in order to build, in order to get an all-star game. So
Yep.
I think there are a ton of positives here. I just don't like the way it's happened. And I don't like somebody who literally gets to major league it for 19 years and then get away with it. Cool.
Brenden has not seen Major League.
I have not, but I've heard it referenced a lot in the last month, couple weeks.
It's fun. You should probably watch it. It's a good time. It's lighthearted. Like, you'd probably be able to stay awake and watch it one time through.
James,
or
how
at
many
least
times
maybe
has Brenden taken us up on any movie recommendation?
Probably
once, maybe twice.
Yeah.
I don't think he still watched Life.
Nope.
No, he definitely hasn't.
Nope.
Oh,
yeah,
horrible.
Tatum's got a tattoo and everything, and I still haven't seen it.
That's your guy.
I even thought he was actually going to watch Poor Things. He didn't even do that.
No, I don't know what made you think I was going to watch that one.
Well.
Oh, never mind. I remember. I thought that was a different one. Yeah, I remember.
Nope. There's some reasons you probably are going to watch that film. All right. Let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for tuning in. Before we get to final thoughts, if you're still watching, give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Also, rating and review. Jump on board with the Kings Beat. Become a premium subscriber. All that good stuff. Again, if you so choose, give Prize Picks a shot. It's a lot of fun. We're having a good time doing it. Even if I've been really, really bad at it, it just adds new angst to the people around me who don't handle losing their Prize Picks nearly as well as I do. What do we got for final thoughts? Brenden?
Shout out to Lindsey Harding for winning G League Coach of the Year. They got their team together after a tough Showcase Cup, which the layout of the G League is interesting and confusing. But after a interesting Showcase Cup, they end up first seed in the West in the regular season, got the bye, won a Kings Warriors single elimination postseason game, which, might happen again here. But Kings came out on top in the G League showing. Good Mason Jones game. But yeah, just shout out to Lindsey Harding, who got this team rolling through a lot of adversity this season.
That was a wildly entertaining game.
Very.
And a very long second half.
What? I also, hang on, before you dive into that, Sean, I want to point out, Brenden just brought up the adversity. I think some people may have forgotten that their starting center killed somebody in December. Just to point something out.
Yeah.
That team has
definitely
been through,
what I was referencing. Yes.
That team has been through some shit. So, straight up.
And I'm not laughing at the situation. I was just like, how wild is it to say something like that? You know what I mean?
No, it's wild.
Insane.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's just something you never. Gosh, it's awful. Yes, adversity for sure. But yeah, my final thoughts are right there along with Brendan's. I'll be down there tonight, and it's going to be interesting. They're playing the OKC Blue, a team that, interestingly enough, Deontay Burton, who's from Oklahoma City and actually spent time with that club, and he was sensational in the first half, by the way, of their win over Santa Cruz. So interesting to see what might happen there with that little storyline, but just a lot of fun. And it was probably one of the bigger crowds I'd seen in Stockton for one of their basketball games. So they were absolutely into it. It was loud. It was a dramatic, tense atmosphere, and I hope they can duplicate that tonight, because looking forward to that. And what Lindsey Harding has been able to accomplish, like, if she had done this 3 years after taking over Stockton, you'd be like, wow, what a run. Like, what a absolutely incredible story. But to do it in her first year is probably even, I mean, it's obviously more impressive, but I don't think I would have picked this, to be honest. And certainly there's a lot of quasi NBA talent on there. You look around the roster and you'll be like, oh, I've heard of him. I know him. It doesn't matter what minor league you're in, baseball, soccer, basketball. If you can say that always adds a little bit of intrigue to your game when you're going to watch it, because it's like, oh, there's someone I've heard of, or this person's been able to actually play in the NBA. And the Kings have a lot of that. They have a lot of experience. And the way she talks about her team being, the NBA just, there's good play. It's so talented that there's always going to be guys that are talented that are not on rosters for some reason or the other. And it's honestly true. You saw even guys like Isaiah Thomas earlier this season, before signing on with Phoenix for the rest of the year, go back to the G League just to get time in, and just to show the people that he was still able to perform and play. And for whatever reason, people go to the G League or find value in it. This team has been kind of fun to watch this year, because there's a lot of camaraderie with them, and there's a ton of like different types of reasons as to what makes them so successful. I feel like I think there's a number of storylines and motivations for different guys, and all you have to look at is either a lottery pick that didn't work out, a guy in someone like Skal Labissiere who's back in the organization that drafted him, and here he is after 3 years out of the league, trying to just work his way back and show that he belongs. And this is, it coincides with this year him actually making the G League All-Star team. Like, there's just so many cool moments like that. And then you have Jordan Ford, who's a local guy who gets a 2-way contract with his hometown team and is able to contribute on the Stockton level. So storylines are just abundant with this team, as 3 guys here who talk on a podcast who love storylines and have to identify these stories for a living. And it's just a lot of fun. So whether they win or lose tonight, it's going to be a lot of fun.
You had told me that Stanley Johnson was one of the best interviews. You got to sit down with him earlier in the year. Right. He is like the most, he puts things in great perspective, is what I'll say. And he seems to be very appreciative of the success that they're having right now.
And
it's good to see. Yeah, it's good to see. Okay, so my final thoughts. I'm actually going to go. I feel like if we got through this podcast and we didn't acknowledge the fact that that Harrison Barnes has, like, for whatever reason, not been able to step up when Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter went out, I think that we would probably hear it. And so I do want to acknowledge that, like, no, we're not letting, like, what's happened here with Harrison Barnes over the last week, where he just, like, stopped being effective. One game he had more turnovers than he did
Shots
points,
taken?
rebounds, and assists. No, points, rebounds, and assists combined. Yeah. He turned the ball over 3 times against, was it the Knicks?
The Knicks. 0 points, 3 turnovers, 1 steal, 1 rebound. 0 of 2 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
I don't know what to say to you out there. Like, there are a lot of people who, wish that Harrison Barnes would have not been back this season and everything else. I just think that this is one of those moments where you had to have him step up, and he hasn't been able to for whatever reason. And he's been a workhorse. He shows up every single night, and puts his uniform on, and he hasn't missed a game for a long time, a couple of years now. But saying that, man, you needed him in this moment, and so kind of disappointing to see how he's performed. What is it? 6 points, 0 points, and 10 points, and the 10 points, most of that came super, super late in the Celtics game, after the Celtics had pulled all their players. So yeah, a pretty disappointing into the season here for Harrison. So again, go ahead.
The one thing I'm going to echo on that too a little bit. I would say that I actually kind of applaud the coaching staff, especially in that Knicks game, because that game where he was completely ineffective and just the 3 turnovers as well. I mean, they only kept him with 14 minutes.
Even they tried to put him back in the game in the fourth quarter. The first thing he did was drop the ball and gave it away.
Right.
And they pulled him right away too. So yeah, I'm with you, Sean. I think people want to get on the coaching staff all the time about, oh, why do you keep relying on him? And like this whole start Sasha thing and all that. Like, look, until Mike Brown has a better option, Harrison Barnes is your starter because he doesn't have a better option. The other guys are not better options.
They have no length, like the typical, like you look at Boston, they're filled with length and fluid athleticism. And Sacramento has Keegan Murray. And then Harrison Barnes is the next closest thing. And like that versatility, while HB is as inconsistent as it gets this year, and he'll still end the year flirting with 50, 40, 80, like he always does. But he's just at the point where he's extremely inconsistent. And I don't feel good relying on him on a given night, and whatever you get is a plus. And he's a guy that can give you that. And the playing every game is important. The size, fluidity, it matters, but definitely inconsistency. And I'm at the point where I'd rather look towards other guys I feel more comfortable asking other guys to step up than I do Harrison.
Yeah, I just don't think if you're Mike Brown, you can just like forge a new path with 10 games left in the season and try to like, oh, it's Kessler Edwards' turn. I mean, you're already doing it with Keon Ellis, and you just can't keep doing it. You gotta just pray that somehow he figures it out and tries to help you get to the end here. Yeah, really, really kind of jarring. But again, I feel like if we didn't mention it and we didn't talk about it, that we probably be a little bit negligent. It's just something that didn't come up in our general discussion earlier.
Yeah, and point out that he had a pretty decent March, and the last two, So I mean, again, he can win you games. He can help you win games, and when he doesn't show up like that, that was probably the most egregious example of it this season, because it's when you need him the
disappointing.
most. Yeah, so I get it.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Jump on board with the Kings Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber. I'm getting us a venue. I'll get us a venue soon. And then I'm going to put pressure on Sean too, because Sean's down there. But I think I've got a line on something that I think will be really cool. And so I'm hoping that that's where we're headed here. Also, I'm not going to be a spoiler, but make sure to watch the women's Final Four. It's been like spectacular.
Stop it.
Pull for Sean and I tomorrow.
Let's go UConn.
Let's go Purdue.
Oh, how dare you!
We're going to beat up Brenden.
Kling Kong, the greatest nickname of all time.
I think what's crazy is that Zach Edey is considered an early second round pick, and Klingman is a top 8.
Oh no!
In most mocks.
No, Edey probably he's be a top 15. I think he'll probably go top 10.
Oh, he's projected to go in the second round.
Is he? Well, I don't know. I think someone's going to take advantage. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Kings Beat podcast. Again, brought to you by Prize Picks and Blue Wire. So for Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you very soon.